Are you ready to begin?
Go for it.
Today, David Caldwell joins me, who's played for Mansfield Town. He's played in Belgium. He's played for a variety of clubs. David, welcome to the show. And if you wouldn't mind starting with where you grew up in Scotland with Inverness Town in the Highland Football League.
Well, I was born, my dad was actually a football player as well. So my dad played for Aberdeen in the 50s, won the Aberdeen Championship. And I was brought up in Aberdeen and played most of my career, younger career, school football and youth football. Scored a lot of goals, very fast in those days. And then I was probably about 17 at the time, and a team called Inverness Caledonian signed me, who are now Calais Thistle. They signed me, and I went up there, and I only played 13 games and scored 13 goals. And I had about 5-6 scouts there. I think I scored 4 in the last game. And I had a heap of scouts watching me and ended up at Mansfield.
Well, to have scouts watching you, how old were you at the time when you made that move over to Mansfield?
18. So I was very young.
Wow. And did you ever feel the pressure of those scouts watching you? And did you know that the scouts were watching you at the time?
Yeah, it was... You always know who's in the stand, and a lot of the older players that had played professional football always say, look, I think at the end of that game, one of the guys that played for Rangers had said to me, it's been great playing with you, and he shook my hand, and I said, what are you on about? And he said, have a look in the stand. So I think after scoring 4 goals against Ross County, they were quite confident I would leave. So, but strangely enough, I went down on the train. So Scotland played England on the day I signed, down from Mansfield, and I went down with a lot of lunatic Scotsmen in kilts, and on the days you could take drink on the train. So by the time I arrived and got picked up at Chesterfield station by the coach, I was actually covered in drink because they were all celebrating and everything. So it was an interesting journey for my first signing of a contract in professional football.
And you signed for £25,000. And could you compare that? Because that was in the late 70s. So could you compare that to how much it would be in today's sort of finances?
Yeah, it was quite a lot of money. I actually know a lot of people ask me that. I've no idea. I mean, it's sometimes it's 5 times or something like that. Okay. But I think at that age, it was Billy Bingham was the manager. So he was the ex-Irish manager and Everton manager. So I had a lot of pace. I could run the 100 meters in 11 seconds. So I was fast. And in those days where defenses played higher, it was always an advantage when the ball went in behind. So, and I'm actually it wasn't my debut professionally, but I played in a reserve match, the first game I played for Mansfield, and Norman Hunter, who had played for England, was playing, and Mick McCartney, who's now a manager, obviously, Mick was playing as well. So I learned quite quickly it was quite a physical, it was late 70s when I started as a kid, but through all that 10 years of the 80s, it was quite a physical league.
Do you remember your debut against Reading? It was the 29th of September, 1979, a 1-0 loss, and you came on in the 76th minute. Do you remember that?
Yeah. You always remember your debut. It was nothing really to write home about. It was, I kind of got on and just ran about like a headless chicken. Typical.
No worries.
Apologies.
No worries.
Brings at the same time. Anyway, it was nothing. But I was quite young at the time, and I think it was good just to get a game.
So actually, talk to me then about the facilities that you were comparable to Mansfield, and then what you were used to before you were 18.
Yeah, no, it was a big step. I went from playing, so it was quite an ascendancy from 16, 17 to 18, because I went from playing under 16 football to playing 1 game for what they call a junior team, which is a kind of senior men league in Scotland, to going straight to, I only played a trial match for them, believe it or not, and Inverness Caledonian watched me in the trial match. And the team that I was in the trial match signed me, and Inverness Caledonian signed me the week later. So, and I only played there for, like I say, 13 games. And then I was away. So I developed quite quickly. I'm doing stuff in football just now with development of players, working on a football app and that. And I'm quite knowledgeable in terms of the science of the game. And I know that if you get players in the kind of that development window, in the right environment, their talent can accelerate quite quickly. And that certainly happened to me. Unfortunately, when I got there, I got introduced to the pub culture, which was probably the end of my probably the beginning of the end of my career. I should have played a higher level.
Well, you played for Mansfield Town in the first season, 1 appearance and 2 as a substitute. But the following season, my word, 31 appearances, 5 as a substitute, and you scored 11 goals. What happened in that season?
Yeah, I think again it was just a little bit more maturity of obviously in the game. Playing to systems as well, it was a lot easier. I played up front with a big guy all the time, and he would hold the ball up well, and I would get in behind quite a lot. And I did. I think it was top goal scorer. I'm still crazy enough, I'm still the fastest goal scorer in history, in Mansfield's history. So 11 seconds was the goal in the FA Cup against Rotherham, I think. So it just shows you after all these years, I don't think anybody will beat that now, because the way the game's played now, they pass it about 1 million times before they put it into the other opposition's half. So I think I'll die with that after this.
In terms of the game that you've seen change, obviously I would have loved to see the game back in the 70s, because I think there's such a difference now. But you as a player, what is the difference that you've seen over these few years?
The players are a lot fitter now, more conditioned. The game is more strategic and analytical, and the build-ups are slower and more concise, I would say. I think from a fan's perspective, the game was a little bit more harum-scarum when I played. It was a lot more exciting because you could launch a ball into the box, there'd be 3 people jump for it, and you'd win a game going to the top corner. Where the game now, they're still building up and they're still trying to be strategic when there's a minute to go. So it's so the game's changed, but the players are a lot fitter, a lot more committed. Less, they've got the challenges with a lot of things like social media that we didn't have. But I would say that, but the game's less physical. I'd probably say it's at least 50% less physical, which is quite a lot.
What one would you have preferred to play in? The Premier League today or back in the day in the late 70s, early 80s?
I think the Premier League today, I would have played probably for Scotland.
Really?
Yeah, my lifestyle was the like I said earlier on. So I've kind of self-diagnosed myself with ADHD later on in my life. And what's interesting, when I look back on my football career, I can see where the addictions and things came from. But there was a huge pub culture. I mean, even at the highest level, you'd be out in the nightclubs and the pubs and the PFA awards, and all the players, even at Premiership level, drank, and they were encouraged because this team kind of thing. It was a totally different culture, but it took its toll on a lot of players. Luckily enough, I've survived it, but a lot of my friends didn't. A lot of my friends have passed away, and one was with drink problems, etc. And I've got another friend at the moment who's struggling as well. So I don't think it was as well in terms of health and safety and corporate social responsibility stuff where they would look after you. It was more or less just kind of get on with it. And I think being protected in mental health and the way they look after players now is a lot better, much better. And I would probably enjoy playing in this more than I would past. If I had a choice to do both, I'd play in the modern game. I wouldn't go back.
And that's because the style of your play sort of, you obviously said you're very fast. That obviously is perfect for the Premier League, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's about adapting really in football. So it is about adapting to situations and life in general. But I would, because I was very fast and I did have short-term speed, so I was very fast over certain speeds, yeah. But you do have to adapt to the game's totally different. The game, I was running, if you look at how you train players, I was running probably, if you do the heat maps like they do now in the game, I was probably running 20, 30, 40 yards. Like more than 10, 15, 20 yards. So because they played so high, the defences were playing on the halfway line, where now they sit on the edge of the box. So you're only trying to break lines 20 yards out. So different game.
You know what's interesting for me? I really prefer the old school sorts of managers. I mean, for you, Mick Jones tried to ease pressure on you. You spent a few games out on the sidelines, and he said Caldwell started to believe that he was a good player and thought he didn't need to prove it. So, I mean, you're smiling there. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, I've always had my challenges, and I think going back to my ADHD, I think, and that's when I look back with a lot of the stuff is I was a manager's nightmare, and the problem was as well I wasn't hugely confident. I was and this is one of the reasons I drank a lot as well, is that because of confidence, I was a different player when I walked across that white line. So where people see me, I mean, back in the 80s, people see me as a playboy. I used to have long blonde hair, and people see me as a playboy and this kind of, and it just wasn't me. But I had to play that image. I had to live up to that, which was a struggle sometimes. And the problem, because I think I was voted at Torquay as a BBC fans hero, and it was just crazy. So no, it's mixed kind of opinions in terms of like how I got on my managers. I think they must have, how do I put it? They would have been very. There was a few managers that wanted to get rid of me, and I think when you're man managing, I'm the type of player that you want to get him to prove you wrong, because I'm more likely to prove you wrong than I am if you just give me a pat in the back. And that unless you're a really good man manager and knew how to do that, would be a challenge.
So you think the best idea would to kind of give you that hairdryer treatment in a way where they tell you you haven't quite proven yourself at the top level just yet?
Yeah, not so much hair. I've had the hairdryer treatment. I've seen it. But I think a lot of times is when managers, when they take something, it's a psychology thing. When you take something away for somebody, or you threaten them with something, like, I mean, you go out and prove them wrong. I think there was one game in Mansfield that season where I scored all the goals. The manager had threatened to drop me, and I think the other player that was going to play in my place got injured. And he'd actually said to me, "Look, I'm going to have to play." It was Ian Greaves. Ian Greaves said, "I'm going to have to play you." And I scored 4 goals. So that was, I would have been a bit of an enigma and very frustrating.
There was also, well, after that sort of clash with Mick Jones followed, how did you react to that as still a young player, right, coming through the ranks, your manager coming out and saying that? Did you put him aside? And I mean, obviously that you would have wanted to prove him wrong, but a bit of a miss in the changing room, right?
Yeah, no, I was managers in those days. They were very diverse in terms of their approach. I mean, Billy Bingham was very calm, collective, and strategic. And I had a few managers at Mansfield. Ian Greaves, I had Mick Jones, but the Billy Dearden for a bit as well, and they were all just slightly different. I don't think football. This sounds really crazy, but football wasn't that serious in those days. So a lot of it, and I come back to that culture. A lot of it, you would end up in the pub. Like, your social life was probably more important than your football life at the time, and which some people will find actually crazy, but it was like that. It was a whirlwind. So really, you didn't take things too seriously. So you just got on with the game.
After a string of bookings and suspensions, you saw the miss out on promotion, and manager Mick Jones got sacked. So, in terms of the bookings and suspensions, and then missing out on promotion, do you think that kind of correlated?
Yeah, probably. My temperament, again, a lot of the problems I had back there of trying to play at a high level. I was very temperamental, very volatile. I was trying to balance also as well of being that fast and elusive player, and also looking after myself. A lot of the managers say, "Look, you need to be more physical. You're going to get kicked all over the park." So I was trying to make myself more physical, and a lot of times I just went over the line. But I was very reactive. I'd lash out, or I mean, if centre halves were going to kick me, it was like a gladiator mentality, probably a bit of my Scottish mentality, man. But I would take defenders on. And when I got to my mid-20s, 25, 20, I was a handful for any centre half. They wouldn't want to play against me because I was a lot bigger at that point. a lot more physical, and I was still fast. So.
But I would have thought this is where I think the game may have been lost a tiny bit. Because now we see fouls for a slight push on a player is ruled out for a goal if they go ahead and score. Do you think that side of the game's been lost?
Yes, I think again, but I liked the idea of the VAR and all that. So I thought, I mean, in terms of the cost to clubs, you getting a bad result and they get relegated and it costs them 90 million or something. I think making a bad decision is not a great idea. So in tennis and all that, I'm into technology. I think if you can use it, it works. It's just how they apply it sometimes is the problem. But I was just, the problem was you would have with referees was that they couldn't see everything. A lot of players, and there wasn't the respect in those days. Players it was more like a fight in a pub sometimes on the pitch. It was a lot of battles going on, and players would throw themselves on the ground if they got. The players nowadays, I think they get a real shock if they played in the game back then.
It's changed that much.
Yeah, they would. I've seen players being put into the billboards. I've actually seen players being hit on the side of the pitch and going 5 yards in the air and hitting the billboards and getting carried off. Sometimes when you get hit, you got to remember some of the big centre halves in those days. They were 6'2", big units. I mean, they weren't the lean machines they are nowadays. These guys were big, and when they hit you, it was like getting hit by a ton of bricks sometimes.
In the 1982/83 season, you played 40 games and you scored 11 goals. Going into a season like that, would you have wanted more goals? I mean, to score 11 goals in 40, that's probably on the underside, right?
Yeah, I think my average was 1 in 3 over my career. Yeah, I did lose my way. I lost love with the game. I lost the again my social kind of life again was just chaotic, and I struggled through my mid-20s in football. So I let myself down. I let teams down. I let managers down, and a lot of the players I played with. But a lot of them were in the same boat. But I should have achieved a lot more during my time in the 20s. I should have scored more goals then because I was capable.
You asked to leave the club after end of the season, but then you changed your mind after 2 weeks. Well, that is a bit of a crazy story from a player thinking his future's done at this club specifically, and now thinking, no, this club is going to fit for me for the time being.
They probably offered me another contract with more money. Simple as that. I did go on loan a couple of times. I don't know if that was before I went on loan or after I went on loan.
I think it was before.
Before, yeah. So, it'd probably been offered another contract because, again, that security of having a couple of years contract and no more money was something. Because I don't think people, I think, because I speak and I work with players in lesser levels and aspiring players, and I don't think when you're in the game, it's more difficult sometimes. I know people say to try and get in it. Once you're in the game, it's very competitive.
You mentioned contracts,
injuries and pressure. Do you know what I mean?
You mentioned contracts there. I think it's mental. For you, you've seen the whole game, but for Mykhailo Mudryk, for example, to get so many years onto his contract, these players getting 8-9 year deals. What do you think as a player that would have been happy to get a 2-year deal?
Yeah, they used to. We never got lots of. I mean, I think just because of the game, mostly it was a 1 or 2 year deal, 3-year deals sometimes that you used to get. But I think there was, I mean, in those days as well, we earned good money. I mean, when I signed my first contract, I think I was on £100 a week. So I was earning £5. I mean, it doesn't sound a lot of money just now, but when you think about, I think it was 40 pence for a litre of petrol. It was 30 or 25 pence for a pint. So £100 a week was quite a lot, plus a £25 appearance money, plus bonuses when you win. So we were well paid in those days. So
you mentioned about your pop life, and the following season you played 41 games, and in September of 1983 you were arrested for walking out after relating to fail to a breathing test. And the reason why you did that was because you thought you'd missed a team bus up to an away game.
Yeah. So again, challenges I had with alcohol and things was I was done for drunk driving and I was up in court, but we were playing Huddersfield that night. It was interesting. My parents were coming down to watch me as well. So I was in court sitting there, and they're obviously waiting to call you in. And I was saying to my solicitor, well, I've got a game tonight. So very young and naive at the time, and didn't understand the consequences. I had a couple of brushes with the law, but nothing, just daftness more than anything. So I jumped on the bus, went across to Huddersfield, played the game, didn't have a great game again. And that's the mindset thing for me was a big thing. I wasn't prepared mentally for a lot of games. And when I was really good. And when I wasn't, I was probably really bad. There was no kind of middle ground with me. So that game, I didn't have a great game. And on the way off the pitch, the police approached me. And the manager came across to say, well, what's happened? Did you spot something during the game or something? And they said, no, we've got a warrant for his arrest. And they said, we could have arrested him at half time. And the boss said, you should have. He had a shocker. So I was taken and bailed at the local police station and back on the bus. My parents obviously were there. So I had a few times where I just did silly things.
But obviously, you admit it was silly, right? So it was just the immaturity of yourself at the time. Yeah. When you returned, you were banned for 1 year. And now you mentioned about being ready and prepared for the games, and perhaps you wouldn't have been able to, you would have maybe got your fine lessened or whatever it could have been. To prepare for a game back then, because I know it's been documented pretty well with players like Ben Foster, who played for Watford. The documentary of games and the game day preparations, they go to hotel, food's paid for them, travels paid for them. What was that like as a player back then? Did you have to pay for your own food, or how did you do that?
No, you still had the pre-match meal. You still had the same old routine. And I think we had to, so contractually, we had to stay in 2 nights before a game. So it was like you weren't allowed out drinking. The bus would arrive for you, take you to a hotel night before, depending how far away it was. You'd have your pre-match meal, so everything was prepared. I think the crazy thing when I look back is we'd be in the pub for 3 days before the 2 nights we stayed in, and then we'd do the real preparation on the Saturday. But when you actually know science now and look back, the alcohol would have probably like taken away all the positives of the preparation before the game. And players used to play cards on the bus and lose their wages before they went on a pitch. Some of the things that used to, and how can you lose your wages and then you got to go on a pitch and play football? So it wasn't, the game now is a lot better, like in terms, it's just cultures have changed over the years, Jamie. Simple as that.
Yeah, well, it is simple as that. And I know that obviously players still, bet on the games or whatever, but now it's a lot more focused and you might get a fine like Ivan Toney was banned for a year. You got sent off for throwing a punch at Martin Hicks after you clashed and you lost 4-0. But it got really crazy because your manager, Ian Greaves, said, I'm sick to death of this childish behaviour, and you were put on a transfer list. And he said your disciplinary record is appalling. So that's another manager obviously speaking out against you.
And they were right.
Yeah, they were. And did you admit that at the time?
Yeah, no, it was not at the time, no, because at the time, I've got a 19-year-old daughter now and I have the conversations with her on her behaviour and all that. But I look back and mine wasn't great. So I hope she doesn't watch this. But anyway, I was told by, and you'll probably go into the manager in the future, I was told him that you're the best when you're on the borderline. He said, you on the borderline could play at the highest level. He said, under the borderline, and this is where I realised looking back, is if I prepared better and I had the right mentality and mindset, I could have achieved a lot more. So a lot of times I relied on my pace and my ability, where I think if I'd been more prepared, I would have been more effective. So no, they were absolutely right, because some of the stuff that I did, I got sent off after 4 minutes for persistent fouling. So sometimes I was a very angry person going onto the pitch, and I just needed a trigger, and that was kind of just due to a lot of things in my life at those times.
Did you take your anger out on the football pitch? Is that where maybe the line was?
Yeah. No, I would say so. I would say I was a frustrated individual when I was a lot younger, for a lot of reasons, and I think that's where when I look back, and I'm not going on too much about ADHD, but when I do look back, we were actually watching, my wife and I were watching a program on television about a football player that had ADHD. And we sat there about a year ago and she said, "You've got that, you've got that." And then when I actually started realizing what ADHD was and I looked back, I had all the traits when I played football. So that was the thing where you're in and out, the dopamine levels and all that. I can see why I was like that. And so no, it's definitely let myself down in terms of my behaviours.
But from a fan's perspective, I understand that, as when you're watching your team and the players constantly getting sent off or whatever it may be, and their disciplinary may be pretty bad, they may think that football that isn't really part of their picture. But for you, was football still a huge thing in your life?
Yeah, it becomes an end to a means sometimes, and it's quite strange, especially when I played. I mean, I did say to somebody in a pub once, "What do you work as?" And he said, "I'm a plumber." And I said, "Well, it's just like being a plumber. I go up and go to training. I just do a different job." And when you were in the game in those days, you really didn't wake up every morning and think you were blessed. You did look at it as a job. And I think you should really, I mean, I look back and again, you should really apply. I should have applied myself more and been more professional in that time. But no, it's just another game, and it's just a job. It was in those days.
To finish off that crazy little segment there, 4 days later, you scored 4 goals in 26 minutes. That's Erling Haaland numbers.
Yeah, no, I scored 3 the week later, I think. I mean, I scored
Yes.
7. I mean, yeah, and I had a lot of people watching me. I know Liverpool were watching me, and a lot of clubs watching me then as well. But again, and it's that when I was good, I was good. So I was unplayable. I mean, some of the players that I'm on a WhatsApp group with a heap of players, and they said all my game I was unplayable. I was totally unplayable, and I was. I mean, we'll go into Torquay in a bit in some of the games, but I played against top players, the high, like the professionals, and played against West Ham and some well known, played for England and all that. And I played them off the park in some games where we would play against Scunthorpe the week later and that'd be terrible. So I like the challenge, I think.
Well, I think the challenge for anyone is a really cool, thing to aim for. I think the people that maybe don't like the challenges as much never seem to do that well. Who was the best player that you've ever played against?
Well, I played against a lot. God, that's a difficult. I've been asked this many times.
I can imagine.
You've got to remember, I played for about 18 years. I played late 70s, all through the 80s and early 90s. So I played with Arthur Albiston. I played with Jerry Armstrong. I played for Ireland. I played with Brown Gunn, Sean Dyche. Played against Emlyn Hughes. Who else did I play against? Alvin Martin. So I played against a lot. I would probably say they're all comparable. I never ever played against somebody I went. There's one guy, and he sadly passed away now, called Billy Eyre, that played. Mansfield signed him, and he actually became a teammate. But Billy was probably the most brutal player I ever played against.
Wow.
And a very honest guy. I think he was from Hartlepool originally, Billy. And Billy would just tell you before you kicked off, "You're not going to have a good day here." And I think he was the hardest player I played against, I think. But most of the players I played against over all those years was quite comparable.
The next season was the season that you scored within 11 seconds against Rotherham in the FA Cup. But then you decided that you wanted a new challenge and you requested a transfer. And Ian Greaves would let you go reluctantly.
Yeah, no, I was actually, well, I think from memory, I was scoring goals in a team that wasn't doing very well. And I think that was a little bit of a frustrating thing. And I think at that time as well, I thought it might be the right time to go. And Carlisle, I had a game the night, I think I had quite a good game on the Tuesday night against somebody. And it was, who was it? I'm trying to think of the manager of Carlisle at the time, quite well, Bob Stokoe. So Bob Stokoe had watched the game, and Bob Stokoe, they were second division at the time. So Ian Bishop was playing for them, Markham Poscott, Alan Shoulder. They were a decent side. Man City were in that league, Portsmouth, Sunderland. So it was a decent league, and I thought, here's my chance to get up the leagues. But you'll know what's coming next.
Tell me what's coming next.
So I ended up going up there and just basically getting involved in the drink culture. So instead of applying myself and taking my chance, I spent most of my nights out with Ian Bishop in Newcastle and having a good time instead of. The good thing about Bish was he managed to go into better things and he signed for Man City, West Ham, and played for England later on in his career. But I had to look after myself because I didn't have the talent he had.
You obviously mentioned that you were loaned out to Carlisle, but you said that if you couldn't find a club by December the 29th, you would quit pro football and then go live back up in Scotland. Were you very serious about that?
Probably not.
Oh,
Probably just another one of my throwaway lines and my frustrating attitude at the time, and that's why managers would really struggle with me. I mean, and I think that's me holding somebody to ransom, etc. But again, I did score. I mean, I think I got voted as even over all these years, even today, I got voted somewhere way up a list in the best players at Mansfield, and fans still think so. I used that against the club, which is probably not a great thing.
Do you think this is where your career sort of, I wouldn't want to say deteriorated, but sort of lost its path in a way? Because 2 months, you played 4 games at Carlisle, and then you were loaned out to Swindon, 5 games, 0 goals.
Yeah, McCarry took me to Swindon. Spent most of my time out as well. So I was at the races, Newbury, and I sometimes, I mean, that's the problem. As I used football as a vehicle to have a great social life. So I spent more time out in the town, and it was, when I look back again, I do regret it now. But yeah, you probably, I mean, if you don't apply yourself to anything, you're going to decline. And you're also getting older.
Yes.
So,
and you returned to Mansfield and you were still wanting to leave. On the final game as a Stag, Fright Rovers in the trophy, how did that go? Because I believe you missed out on the chance to go to Wembley.
Yeah, I've got a real unique claim to fame, which I don't think anybody else has got in football. It's quite insane. Every team I left, so Mansfield, Chesterfield, and Torquay, the consecutive year went to Wembley. So I left Mansfield. The year later, they went to Wembley. I left Chesterfield. The year later, they went to Wembley. I left Torquay, and the year later, they went to Wembley. So if you want to go to Wembley, you should have just signed me. Somebody told me that. That was one of the weird things in a questions and answers thing. But
well, that's a good stat to have.
Yeah,
well, not for your opinion, but to bring to you is unique.
Yeah, but no, it was just a very challenging time. I look back and I struggled with life in football then. So that's probably the easiest way to explain it, being honest.
Even if you signed for a club like Arsenal or Liverpool, who were at the top of their game in those years, would you have still had that party pop culture that you had at these other clubs?
Well, there was a culture in football of that. You just could spend more money when you were higher up. So I used to go to the nightclubs in Manchester, and I used to see the Man United players, and I used to see they were out as well. So I don't know. That's a good question. I don't think I would have changed. I think I'd have probably. I think during my football career, I always had a self-destruct thing, which I could never kind of shake off. So I used to, and again, relating back to ADHD, I used to always say what makes me good makes me bad. But then I've now learned that ADHD's got a magic sauce with a kind of sour taste of vinegar now and again. I can see why it would have affected me then. So
you joined Chesterfield not long after for £12,000. But what I really want to try and understand is, within this short space of time you've played for 3 or 4 clubs, or 4 clubs, did you ever care that you were playing for 4 clubs in a short space of time?
I never really cared about anything in the days. I mean, I honestly, football was an end to a means, and I think when you have a level of ability and you know that you can obviously play above the standard that's maybe going to compete with you for your place, you kind of you don't appreciate it enough. So I took a lot of things for granted. So and I think it's at the end of, well, speak about in my career later, but it's at the end of the career you get a shock. So So
What would the older version of you now? What would you have told your younger self? Do you regret the stuff that you did? Do you wish that you made the most of it?
yeah, I don't think there was a lot of place and support to help you. So you had to be. It was all about bravado and egos and everything like that. So the game was very different. So you really wouldn't speak. I mean, nowadays people speak about that. I mean, even if I had ADHD, well, having ADHD back then, I would never have told anybody then. I mean, so I think nowadays we're a lot more open as human beings, which I think is good, because I think I suffer. I mean, I had some really dark times, not for this show, but I had some really dark times in football, which is probably didn't help me. So yeah, I mean, it's. I look back and I would like to have had a better version of myself.
And obviously, with Chesterfield coming along, how did you fit into that team? £12,000. I would have said that was a decently good fee for a player, right? Of back then.
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, it was okay. I became a kind of journeyman pro by that time, so I was at that kind. I think it was 26 at that time, and then so John Duncan was he was a Scottish manager. He was he's passed away. John was hilarious. Now he got me, but he also realised that we were party animals. So there was a couple of the players. So we were out having too much of a good time. So he used to always like we used to come in sometimes. So I don't know. There's a story I'll tell about Middlesbrough. So I'd been injured. During the week, and I had a fitness test on the Thursday, and I was struggling, and I was saying to the manager, I don't think I'm going to make it. I think the calf's a bit. So on the Friday I went out. We were playing Middlesbrough on Saturday, and the Friday I went out and I came back at 4 o'clock in the morning, been out drinking all night, came into physio Saturday morning, did a little bit of a warm-up and got some treatment because we had a game on the Tuesday. No intention of being able to play on the Saturday, and I kind of went, I don't feel that bad. And Tony Mowbray and Gary Pallister, the centre-halves for Middlesbrough then, and I played and scored 2 goals within about 20 minutes, something like that. And I did that periodically. I wasn't one, I would quite be strict about not going out on the Thursday or Friday. I could never have played on a Saturday if I'd been out Thursday, Friday. So I was very strict about that. But on that one-off, it did happen a couple of times.
How did you, I suppose, rate your time at Chesterfield? You were there for 2 years, 17 goals in 68 league games.
Terrible. Should have scored a lot more. I should have been scoring at least 1 in 3, 1 in 2. So the challenges I had just with my lifestyle. I spent man about town and spent all my time going out again. So it was never going to change. I think Einstein's got a great quote. It's insanities continue to do things the same way, expecting the outcome to be different. And I kept doing things the same way, and the outcome was never different.
Was there ever times where because obviously you going out and partying would have been in your own time, but was there ever any time where you missed training or you missed games because of that?
Yeah. Missed pre-season, came back late from Greece. So I for 10 years, I was in Spain so I go to Ibiza for 10 weeks. So the season would finish, I'd go and stay in Ibiza with some of the players or on my own. So I did that for 10 years all the way through the 80s. And I went to Greece once and came back late for pre-season training. I said I missed the plane and all that, but I just had another night out where I could recover from.
£7,000. You got to move to Torquay, and there you scored an overhead kick. You had 3 more sending offs, but you made the playoffs.
Yeah. So at 27, I realised I wasn't fit. So Cyril Knowles, no disrespect to any other of my managers, he really got me, and he was quite brutal. He's sadly passed away as well. But Cyril. So I had a yellow convertible Jag then. So I drove down from Chesterfield to Torquay, and there was palm trees, and he met me in the Livermead Cliff Hotel, and there was a balcony and everything like that. And I went upstairs and I sat there, and he said, "How you doing, son? Is that your car down there?" And I went, "Yeah." And he said, "Torquay, some night spot, you know." He said, "You single?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, you'll love it down here. You'll love it down here." I said, "Oh, that's great, Gaffer." So he said, "Look, we've agreed the fee. It's just between us now. If we can agree, you can become a Torquay player." So they gave me more money than I was on at Chesterfield. They were I think they were top of the fourth then. We finished off in the playoff position. I signed a contract. He gave it to the secretary. Secretary walked away and he said, so have you got anything planned? What's your plans? Because you're now a Torquay player. I said, well, I don't know, Gaff. I was just going to go back up the road, maybe come back down for Friday. He said, no, I want you back up the road and I want you back down tomorrow morning. And he says, because you've underachieved in all your career. He said, I don't think you're fit. And he said, if I see you in a pub, I'll fine you 2 weeks' wages. If I see you out, I'll fine you 2 weeks' wages. And I'm going to introduce you to Norman Medhurst, who's a coach, and he's going to get you fit. So he actually sold me a dream of life in the nightclubs. And I was running up and down stairs, hills. And that's when I realised I wasn't fit.
And that was because you were too comfortable at your previous clubs?
Yeah, too comfortable. And I then realised what I could achieve when I was fit. Because, and this is something I've brought and explained to players nowadays, is that if you're not fit, you're never going to hit your ability heights or your talent heights if you're not fit, because if you're not fit enough to do it, it's like running a marathon and you're not fit, you're not going to get to the winning post in good shape. So that's something I realised. So I could run for 90 minutes, and because I was fast and physical, I was quite a unit in those days. So and it went off. I was down in Torquay just before Christmas for I was in a book, top 12 players in 50 years of Torquay's history. And fans just took to me. I think overhead kick in your debut, but there was an overhead kick at Coventry in the FA Cup as well. And I love Torquay. It was, I think if Cyril had got me when I was 18, I think I would have probably achieved a lot more or fallen out with him.
Well, do you think that he was the best manager he played under? I think from watching on the outside, I think from a manager to be so honest with a player that potentially could go the wrong way, I think that's a very good manager.
I think Cyril had the art of man management and the art of kind of kicking you up the bum and patting you on the head at the same time. And he would make you feel $1 million. I mean, he used to say to me, it's interesting because the conversations you have with Cyril on your own, Cyril would tell you you're the best player in the world. He used to say to me, like, you should have been playing at the highest level. And I mean, but don't let me down. I mean, he came on the pitch. There was a match against Scunthorpe where I was elbowed in the throat, and Cyril came on after the player, and there was so Cyril will look after you, but in training he would also kick you. I mean, he was like lovely guy. You'd run through brick walls for Cyril.
Well, that's what. So, for example, I know at Watford currently they've got Tom Cleverley, and they shouldn't be where they are. I think they should probably be doing a bit worse. They were predicted to go down. But in terms of the players, there's been a lot of talk that the players are fighting for Tom Cleverley because they have so much respect for a manager. So, for as a player where you were, do you fight more for a manager depending on how much you get on with them or how much they get on with the team?
Yeah, I think you need to create I'm doing a lot of work just now with performance stuff. I've just started a business called Performance Goal. And if you look at performance, if you create a high performance environment, you're more likely to succeed. And when I look back, a lot of that high performance environments, you don't know what it looks like sometimes, but if you're very fit, you're very organized as a team, you're very motivated, that's a high performance environment. You're going to achieve more. So there's a belief. If you look at the Man United team, I don't know if you've watched the Fergie documentaries and all that. He is the epitome of somebody you'd run through brick walls for. Your belief. And I think that's the difference between teams that lose games in the last 5 minutes and win games in the last 5 minutes is the belief. So it's definitely something. Football is so fragile in terms of getting so many of the components right of football. If you get them all right, you're a successful team. But even you've seen the teams like Man City just now spend a fortune and don't get it right. So one little thing you don't get right, it won't work.
You moved to Belgium for the first time in your career. You've moved abroad to KVV Overpelt for £13,000. How would you sort of describe your transition over there? Because to move to another country later in your career, it can either go really well or really bad.
Probably the worst move I made in my life. I kind of followed him. I got a lot of money for it. And that was the crazy thing then. I took the money. The lifestyle was totally diverse across there in the culture. It also wasn't a decent level. I was actually supposed to have gone over. There was a team called, what they call Racing Genk. So Genk was just up the road from there. I got lied to by the agents and everything. Like the agent says, because there was a 3 foreign player rule at that time. So they said, we'll put you in this team and then you can go into this team. And I was just basically lied to. And then when I got there, they actually said, look, you probably need to get a part-time job. And I was like, eh? So they had all the, when we got presented to the, it's funny, I went out, as a guy who played for Everton, he sadly passed away as well. Andy King played for England, Ipswich. I mean, Andy was a great player. Andy was there. We went out into up to Eindhoven and bumped into Romario, Van Basten and Hullet on a night out. And Andy knew them because he'd played for England and everything like that. I was speaking away and he said, well, who are you going to be playing for? And we told him, and the 3 of them were kind of howling at the bar. He said, that's not a team. Do you know what I mean? And it was kind of at that time I realised, what have I done? And then I broke my ankle. But Belgium was just a cult. I was very lonely in Belgium. There was no, because where the club was as well, it was very rural. So that whole nightlife of mine just went down the pan, and I spent a long time sitting in a bar drinking. And it just, this is where my career did go into decline. The Belgian move was just, I went there because I didn't want to serve an 8-match ban that I got at the end of the Torquay. And worst decision of my life.
You went back to back abroad because then you went to South Africa. How was that? Because I know as a player, you were, again, probably at the time thinking, what have I done to move to Belgium? But then to move even further away from your home in South Africa is a bold move to make.
I think when you become a journeyman pro, you moving about clubs and moving about, especially if you're single, it doesn't really matter. You kind of, and I was never really, I mean, I was from Aberdeen, but I left very young. So it's not something that dragged me back to Aberdeen. So South Africa, I got a phone call. I came back, and I remember I was back at my parents, and I was running about. I was trying to get fit again, and I was trying to get the ankle right. So I was running on uneven surfaces in the forest, and I was getting fit. And I came back home, and my dad said, there's been a phone call. The PFA have phoned you. So the Professional Football Players Association phoned us up and said, look, you're on this list for going abroad, and there's a team interested in you in South Africa. Are you interested? So the guy phoned me, and he sold the dream to me. And to be fair, I mean, what a lifestyle. I mean, it was crazy. But have you ever seen the film The Hangover?
No, I haven't. I don't watch a lot of films, I have to admit, David.
You need to watch The Hangover, because The Hangover was like a crazy time film. And it was like The Hangover.
Well, how would you describe the football side of South Africa? Because I know for South Africa, we don't really hear a lot about South African football here in the UK.
It was just bonkers. So you got to bear in mind, Mandela just got out of prison. So I was there when Mandela was in prison, and then when Mandela got out of prison. So I was there during apartheid and after apartheid. So that was one of the reasons I could, well, to bear in mind, I was still under contract. Well, I was still registered by the Belgium club. So and this is where I found out, so the agents wanted money, the club wanted money. It turned out then that they were trying to sell me for 83,000 when they bought me for 13 or something like that, because the agents got so much money and they wanted all the money back. So basically, this is before, I don't know, you're quite young, Jamie, but there was a thing called the Bosman ruling.
Okay.
Remember the Bosman ruling? So the Bosman ruling was that, so they could actually not pay you, withhold your registration and stop you working, more or less. The Bosman ruling came in, I think it was Jean-Martin Bosman, and he took the governing bodies to court and won, which basically means if they didn't pay you within 2 weeks, you'd be free. But at that point, you could only go and play in countries that weren't under FIFA jurisdiction. And South Africa was one of them. I think China was another, or whatever. So I could only go there, or I think I had an option to go another weird and wonderful place that I can't even remember. I couldn't even spell. So I went to South Africa, and I arrived there, and the first thing I was asked, do you have any kind of like free Nelson Mandela T-shirts in your case? Because it wouldn't be a good idea of wearing them around Pretoria, where I was going to, because obviously the apartheid government and things like that at the time. And then I was there during the transition. And it was just, so you play in townships, and it was predominantly, obviously, a kind of coloured supported sport. So a lot of the whites would play rugby and cricket, but you'd have crowds like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 at games. It was bonkers. It was like, and the football was talented, but not organised. Very, very show your talent, very African football. It's different now, but in those days, some great players, some talented, gifted players. But it was just spent more. The games were getting cancelled, and we were spending more times in the pubs and nightclubs, and I think I had to come back before I died.
Well, what were the, I suppose, the facilities like over there? As a player, you obviously got pushed towards drinking and going out to the pop culture again, which again for your career isn't a good thing.
No, it wasn't a good thing, because it was, and it was the worst it's ever been. I mean, it was the worst because of time on my hands, a lot of money. All the accommodation was paid for, the cars were paid for, and everything. And we had a lot of, and the rand was £5 to the pound, so you could go out and buy it. And also, I had some money as well from football, so I think it was 20 pence for a breakfast and 25 pence for a beer. So because the economy in those days, so the lifestyle that I led was great, but it was never going to be sustainable.
You returned to Chesterfield for £14,500. To return to Chesterfield, obviously you mentioned the club before that you've played for. Was that a move that you were wanting to take? Did you want to go back to what you remembered?
Yeah, to be fair, I was stealing money at that time. I mean, I wasn't fit. The year I had, and the time I had in Belgium, the time I had in South Africa, had really taken a hit in my fitness, just simply because of we didn't train. We didn't have to train all the time. A lot of the stuff was like you down to your own self to go out and train, and I wouldn't. So I came back not fit. But Paul Hart was the manager at Chesterfield, and I played against Nigel, his brother. Me and Nigel used to have a few battles. So I remember Nigel said to his brother, "You should sign him." To be fair, I was still effective. I was still a seasoned pro, but I was more of a target man then. I'd lost pace, and I was more physical then, and I had a lot of problems with hamstrings and fitness then. So it was coming towards the end of my career, and I was just trying to pinch money out of the game, to be honest with you.
To kind of compare the players, okay, so for example, let's say back in your day was 100% in terms of physicality, right? It's one of the best it's ever been in terms of the game, like you and other people. And then you currently have now, what percentage would you give the players now in terms of the comparison of physicality and fitness?
Probably about 95% fitter.
Okay.
Their condition now, they've got their actual recovery, everything. We would play with lactic acid, stiffness, lactic acid. We just didn't have any science. I mean, ice baths now and everything. I mean, you're going into oxygen chambers now and everything. So we go into the players' lounge and start drinking, and that wouldn't help your injuries. So the fitness levels of the players now, they're elite athletes now. So the difference in football, we were football players. The players today are athletes. So you could put some of them into the Commonwealth Games, and they'd give somebody a race. So there was very few people in the game during the 80s when I played that was as fit as that.
One player that I particularly love is James Milner. And I love the fact that he's so old school, maybe not as old school as the 90s, but he's still old school. But I love the fact that he still brings it into a modern game. For players like James Milner, I mean, I'm sure you could name more. Do you like the fact that there's still players that play that old sort of football, the basic common ground football?
They're few and far between. The game is so analytical now. I mean, so they're doing. I mean, a lot of the set pieces. I mean, they're doing zonal set pieces. I call them zonal set pieces. So they're setting up scenarios where they're moving the ball about, trying to isolate defenders, and then they're just playing pocket football. It's bang, 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 goal. So the game is so much different. It's very difficult to be that player in this environment, I think. So I don't know if the game, I don't watch as much football as I used to, which is because I don't find it that entertaining. A lot of the games, I think at the highest level, the game's entertaining. But it's funny, I watched the Torquay game. And they're in the Southern National League. And it's strange because the game's less technical, how to put it, it's less strategic at that level because they don't have the ability. So it is more like the kind of old game. So it was kind of more enjoyable. Things you would just see things material. You can actually predict who's going to win most games.
Do you think? You think it's less predictable now?
I think I think you can predict with pressure. And if you watch teams now, so back when I played, you would somebody hit a long ball and you get beat 1-0. It's very rare now that you have that one-off with the score, and then you can hold out. Because when you're camped in your penalty outside your penalty box, and you've got Liverpool and Man City and players that are that caliber that are sitting, your concentration is going to go at some point. Something's just going to go, and they're going to get. So the dam's going to burst. The Man United game against Rangers the other night, I said to the guys in the WhatsApp group, I think they had 25 and 35% possession, Rangers, and I said the dam will burst soon. To be fair, some games you can get away with it, but consistently over a season is when you're under pressure, you tend to find the pressure kind of gets to you in the end.
You played 32 games and scored 4 goals for Chesterfield, and you retired due to a cartilage injury. So it wasn't a retirement because essentially you were too old to play the game. Your body sort of broke down on you. And do you think that was because of your pop culture in the previous years?
Yeah, most definitely. Players nowadays play until they're 40. I think if I looked after my body and I looked after myself, and I think that's a lot of the players that I know now, they're in getting operations. Like Trevor Christie that I know, he was in getting an operation the other day. The other one was getting an operation. So I think it took your toll on you, the physicality of the game. With the game now, your rotation of players not playing so much as well, so they can last a little bit longer. But no, definitely. I mean, it was just I shouldn't have played the game. It was Chris McMenemy played me against Sheffield United in a reserve match, and I came down, and next day when I went to physio, and I just had a rag on it. So it was a bucket handle tear, and they shaved it. So it was the same guy. He did King Charles's elbow when he fell off his polo pony the day before, and he did mine after. But he was better at elbows than he was at knees.
And I guess, do you still feel the cartilage today? Is it still something that holds you up today?
Well, crazily enough, the surgeon, the consultant said to me, "You're going to have a perfect knee." So what he says, I'm just going to take the ride, but it's going to take a bit of time to get used to it. It took too long, and I ended up retiring, and I went and signed for Inverness Caledonian again, and then they were obviously merging with Cali Thistle. And I always had a problem with that. It was always blow up with like fluid and come back down. And then over the years, but I think it was about 3 months ago. So 3 months ago, I'd played 5-a-sides on a Friday, and the knee was just giving me problems. And then it got to a point where it was really bad. So I went to the doctor and I said, look, I think I've done my cartilage again. I don't know if it's the same. So they sent me for an x-ray and a scan and said, well, we can't see anything. I said, well, I've actually got scars on my knee where I got the operation. What do you mean you can't see anything? And the cartilage seemingly healed itself. And what I had was what they call goose foot tendonitis. It's the area on your knee with your calf tendon meets your hamstring and your thigh muscle. And it inflames and it can be quite sore. And that's what I had. And since I've actually treated that, my knee's been perfect.
So you still play 5-a-side now?
Yeah, I'm going to play. I keep getting enticed into. It's just I don't have a huge amount of time sometimes. But I play with John Sutton is Chris Sutton's brother, and he's got his academy, which is just down the road from me, and they play on a Friday morning. So I try and go down there when I can. I like to go more often.
Five-a-side's brilliant, though, isn't it? I love it.
I love it. I mean, one manager did. Was never a five-a-side player. One manager said you'd be a better player on an aerodrome. So, because my pace. So
Okay.
yeah.
So for like the long distance sprints, you'd be better. But I think the fitness in terms of both of them is mental. So I played 11-a-side, then I went to five-a-side, and it's completely. You wouldn't expect five-a-side to be as challenging physically as it is.
Yeah, because you don't get a rest. So when the ball's at the other end, there's no rest. Well, I found that when I started playing, when I finished, and a lot of people say, "Come and play five-a-sides," and I just couldn't be bothered like tracking players. So I used to get the ball and score goals, and I could score goals. I mean, I played some games where people didn't actually, because I'm still quite fit. I mean, I'm getting on now, but I can go into a five-a-side game and still whack a ball in the back of net, still beat a player, etc., which surprises people. So it's like the film Cocoon. I know you don't watch films, but that's another one.
I've got a big list growing up here. No, I have to be honest with you. You might have to join our five-a-side team because you're not doing too well. But so you decided to retire, and for you as a professional player all down these years, would it have been a big deal for you to retire? And how did you come about telling yourself that it's time to stop playing the game?
Kind of with great difficulty and with resentment. And I think I think you kid yourself. And I think a lot of football players do this. We're doing some work with this business I'm doing in terms of that transition on the kind of pathway out. So the pathway in is quite easy. The pathway out of football is very, very. Some of my good friends have struggled with mental health over the years with coming out of football. And nothing prepares you for it. It's very like I did some stuff at a university with a psychologist who worked for the military as well, and he was telling me about the people that come out of the military, and it's very similar because you're institutionalized in that bubble, and then when you come out, you don't have those. And this is where you've got to find the transferable skills. So curling the ball in the top corner or having an overhead kick is not there for your day-to-day job. And I was lucky that I met somebody that did say, look, you'd be good at sales. And I was like, sales? And they got me it was Xerox for photocopiers. It was a company that sold them. And he said, photocopiers. And I went, what's a photocopier? And he goes, not a good start to an interview. Don't say that if you go there. But I'd never seen a photocopier.
Wow.
So why would you?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I made 5 comebacks, not in professional football. I got dragged out of retirement at 40 to play for Lossiemouth in the Highland League against Elgin and scored in the 83rd minute as a sub and got them into the Scottish Cup. I ended up the manager there. I then retired again, ended up going and playing for another team. And finally, when I think I was about 40, no, I was 30, what was I being, 30, I think it was about 38, I got offered double the money to go and manage a business down in Edinburgh. So I became a business manager, and then I ended up working for Xerox. Ended up working directly for Xerox, and then in that industry for a few years.
Well, we've just spoken about your entire career. Before we finish up this interview, there's 2 things that I want to ask you. So, number 1, what would be your advice to the next generation of players coming through?
Well, work hard is one, and it's an easy thing to say. Be patient, listen to good advice, but more important, you need to start working on the mindset of being resilient and patience, because it doesn't happen. But you need to work hard. I don't think I'm building a football app at the moment, and it takes into consideration all that, and we're using AI and things like that. It'll be interesting when I get it launched. If we should be able to get it launched, and it's all about that.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we always do here, it's a bit of a religious thing, is we build you a FIFA card. Do you know what a FIFA card is?
No.
Okay, so there's a video game that's called FIFA now, EAFC, and every player gets a base card at the start of the game. So it's just their rating, and throughout the game, they might get like a limited edition card that will be out for a certain amount of time.
Right.
So okay, so what? There's 6 things here: so pace, shooting, passing, dribbling, defending, and physicality, and you can rate them 1 from 99.
Right. So it's an assessment of their components of their ability.
Exactly. So do you want to start off with your pace then? What would you rate your pace?
10.
No, out of 99, remember?
99, sorry.
Yes.
99. Oh, 99.
Very fast. Shooting?
Shooting. Probably about 60.
60. As a striker?
Funnily enough, I wasn't a great striker, more instinctive.
Okay. Passing?
Passing, probably about 60.
60 again. Dribbling?
Probably about 80.
80. So that's higher than the shooting, which is that's something for a striker back then as well.
Yeah.
Dribbling?
You said dribbling, so it was about 80.
Sorry. Defending?
Defending. God. Around about 10.
10? Okay. And last but not least, physicality?
Physicality, I was probably be up there. Probably about 80.
80. Okay. David Caldwell, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking about your time in Belgium, South Africa, Mansfield. I mean, the list is endless, and I really appreciate you joining me and speaking about your whole career.
No, really enjoyed it. Thanks, James. Take care. Thank you.
No worries.